everyone, thanks for joining me. I'm Eileen Roche, founder of Designs and Machine Embroidery, and welcome to this episode of Between Friends. Today we are going to bind a quilt. That last big job, the last challenge that you have of creating your beautiful quilt is adding that binding. And I just thought I would share with you how I do it and how I use the Weightless Quilter to hold all that bulk. It makes that big job really fast. So I see many of you are joining in from all over. We have Isabel in France. Welcome. Thank you. Carol Lombard in Arizona. And Candace is up in Wisconsin. I understand it is pretty nice up there in Wisconsin right now. You never know, right? It could be minus 28, but I think it's probably around the 60s. Oh, and Hildur from Vineland, New Jersey. Welcome, Hildur. That's kind of my old neck of the woods. It's glad to see someone here from New Jersey. So today, first I'll show you the November doors. Many of you have been busy making them, and I love what the OML gang has done with them. Don's minis are really great, so we'll be showing them in just a few moments. I just want to make sure that you're all signed in and you can hear me. So, give us a thumbs up or a couple hearts just to let us know that you are listening and, you have sound, right? So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I want to show you those doors, but just so you know that you're tuned in today, this is what we're going to show with the November door. Your doors will show, and then we're going to move on to quilting, which is prepping the binding strips, handling the bulk of the quilt, attaching the binding, mitering the corners, and then stitching in the ditch, right? And some of you like to use decorative stitches, I'm sure. But before we get to that, let's look at the doors. So here we are. This is January through April and May through August. And then we had November, what was that? September, October, and November. Thank you. And our last was November, which was the barn door. So beautiful, I thought. And many of you thought so too. So let's take a look at what Charlene Brokaw did. Look at the little chicks she has in the foreground. Oh, I love that. It looks great. And she's got a pitchfork, propped against the barn. And Crystal Campbell, she added the month to hers up at the top. And she's got a pig and a farmer with the pitchfork, another pitchfork against the wall. And she's got a couple chicks up in the hayloft. Oh, I think that's adorable. Really well done, both of these. Just beautiful. Lisa Granley, again, lots of the same minis from, I guess, Dawn at OML Embroidery. And I love her quilt block that she did in the navy and white. It's really a nice stark contrast, really pops out. Now, Marianne McCain-Dottie, she opted for a winter look. She did a snowflake sky and a white foreground instead of the grass. And of course, she stitched her embroidered grass in white to make it look like little snowdrifts. And her pig is adorable, just adorable, along with her chick. Renaud Paulson kind of went along with me, very traditional, not a lot of no extras, and I like that. It looks really nice. Now, Nancy Eggleton, look at the image that she shared. She's actually, placed her finished door in front of her laptop, which I'm sure is showing Sue Brown doing the sew along. So that's kind of fun, huh? And she's, of course, got the farmer and the pitchfork. Now, Marjorie on the left has really added some embellishments. She's got a cow, which looks just wonderful. And then a whole crop of pumpkins there and a turkey to the right, her pitchfork. She's got a sun up in the sky and the chicks in the hayloft. Really cute. Now, Joan on the right-hand side, I love what she's done. That fabric that she used is so lifelike, isn't it? Oh my goodness, it really looks like wood. And then she added, roosters and hens and chicken in the foreground. I love that. Looks really nice. Really, really nice. And then Sandra Conley, she also selected a brown fabric. That looks great. It's kind of that mottled, weathered look like you would get in a long Wisconsin winter, right? Winter after winter, for sure. And then Joy Anthony, she followed my path, very traditional, with the red fabric and blue and gold quilt block. And then Sharon Crean, she also added November to her sky to identify the month that this door symbolizes. And she added a pig in the foreground and our farmer and pitchfork. Now, Dwani Howard, she opted to make her weather vane, not black, but in gold, like a brass weather vane. Looks beautiful. And she's got her chicks in the foreground and farmer and also pitchfork and some loose hay there. Chris Yost, look at the sky on Chris Yost. Is that lifelike or what? That is just beautiful fabric. I love that selection. Very creative. And in her foreground, she's got a pig, and I'm guessing that's a calico cat, I think. And also her pitchfork, she added a pumpkin, and she's got a lantern. I think that's the first lantern that I've spotted. And Susan Wee has also a kind of a winter look, where she has a winter sky and also a very light foreground along with her cow. Just awesome. And Gayla George, it's probably not pronounced George though. This is half animals. I love that. So she's got a horse head, you know, peeking into the scene, and then also a lamb on the other side. And she put the name of the farm, Sterling Farm, right across the top of the barn. Beautiful. And Candy Bray, she has added some birds up in the sky and a beautiful embroidered cloud. She also did 2020, which possibly could be the year, but maybe it's an address. And her heifer in the foreground. And then she also has some snow drifting there that she added, and also an evergreen to the left side of the doors. And she's added some snow to that. And that choice of fabric is also quite beautiful, very lifelike, really looks like, you know, the stripes that you would see on wood, on a wood barn. Just beautiful. Okay, Christina Cunningham Alford. This is symbolizes her Alford Farms, and there's her farmer and a goat, and she's got a chick in the foreground. Beautiful. And Elaine Kaplan, she kind of went my path. I like the fabric that she selected. Actually, I think I might have that same fabric in my stash. It makes great grass, doesn't it? And she also went with a blue and yellow block, which is quite fun. And then Skoka Berry Embroidery added a cardinal to the rooftop, and then also a squirrel in the foreground. That's the first squirrel that I've seen. Love that. That looks really great. And the pitchfork is leaning up against the barn. So tidy, just nice and straight. Looks great. Judy Whitaker, you added a pig with a chick on the head of the pig. Friendly animals in your barn, right? Very nice. Really well done. Beverly Lentz Betts. Now, this truly symbolizes, you know, the season. You have not only a scarecrow, but you also have a turkey, possibly on his last days, right? It's just really great. And then she's got some chicks up in her hayloft. And Susan Lady, she has added Fraser's. Well, that's not a very clear photograph. I can't read that actually because the photo is not very clear, but she's got a donkey and a cow and a pig in the foreground. She has a cat climbing up the wall. I think this is probably a call out to that book series that she so enjoys. I think it's The Outlanders. And McDowell, you say very talented people. Good work, everyone. Absolutely. And I love your icon there with the kind of looks like a candy sewing machine. Very cool. Aren't they beautiful barns? Sandy or Curie? You've said that well. They definitely are. Everyone has done a great job. Oh, and here's a great job. Here's Joanne Banco. Hi, Joanne. Glad to spend some time with our other sewers today. Yes, me too. It's a wonderful place to gather during these difficult times and online and just say hello to each other. You know, Joanne Banco is a brother ambassador and very talented embroiderer and sewist, and you can find her over at Let's Go Sew. Let's Go Sew. That's where you can find her. And Aine McCarthy. Hi, Aine. She's one of our educators, and she's from Texas, right here nearby me, which is lovely to have her nearby, and she loves the barns. She's a Kansas girl, so she has a lot of barns in her history, and she's a veterinarian, so you've probably spent a lot of time in barns, right, Abe? Oh, that's great. Yes, so many. They are really, really talented. Judy Warren, thank you for the nice comments. The doors are really neat, and everyone is so talented. I love how they add the different elements, you know, and I know they get a lot of them from OML Embroidery. Don makes them, you know, and offers them to everyone for free on Saturday morning, which is quite nice and kind. But I know that many of you, you know, do it on your own and actually add your own elements from embroidery designs that you've had previously. And hello, Rita Young from Australia. Thanks for joining us. Nice to have you here. Nice to have you here. Okay. Oh, and there's our good friend, Deborah Jones. So many barns. Yeah, they really are all beautiful. Okay, well, let's talk about if you're going to be adding minis or any kind of element to your barns, are you often searching through your embroidery stash trying to find the pig, the cow, the horse head, or whatever? Well, we have a great, it's a software program, but really it's more like an app. It's something that you install and you never have to worry about it again. It's called Perfect Stitch Viewer. And what it does is it turns all of your embroidery designs into an embroidery image gallery right on your computer, whether it's a Microsoft or an Apple product. So I thought I would just take you into my hard drive so I can show you how I use it. And let's make sure I have the right file open. Okay, so here is a folder on my hard drive, and this is my jewelry collection. You know, I have, since I make these, a lot of these myself, you know, I have multiple folders of them. So this is how they would appear. Earring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, duh, that's hard to decipher what they are, correct? So up in Internet Explorer, at the top of the folder area, you have all of these options to view your designs, your files in a different manner. So if I click on large icon, because I have Perfect Stitch Viewer installed on my computer, I now see them as thumbnails, and I can clearly see which one is my favorite. And truth be told, it's hard for me to say my favorite, but it might be earring number 4 or earring number 14. But then I really like 7 to, I don't know. There's a lot that I really love them all. So, but you know, if you're searching for one and you need it to be a certain size and you don't really want to open it up, I can hover my cursor over it and it tells me it's an embroidery design. It gives you the size of the digital file and the date modified. But I'd like to know more. So if I go into the preview pane, now when I click on one of the earrings, I get a larger view. Over here, also under the preview pane, now remember, this is all in your Explorer. This is already existing on your computer. But because you have Perfect Stitch Viewer installed, you have these new options to view. So when I click on the details pane with large icon selected, I now get a complete detailed preview of that embroidery design, whichever one it is that I have selected. So here on earring 5, I get the thumbnail image, tells me how many stitches, how many colors, the size, where it's located on my hard drive, and the date created. And, you know, I would have all that information for everyone, which is really handy. Like, what if I'm really in a hurry and I only want to stitch a single color earring, so that I could just go to quickly see that there's only one color, you know, well, you can see that anyway. But I love that Perfect Stitch Viewer, and it's on sale this week, so I would hope you would take advantage of that. And it's only $79.99. Is that the right price? Let's see. Oh, I'm in the wrong. Yep, when you leave 2 open, you can get in trouble. Okay, so yeah, it's $79.99, and it's normally $99.99, and you can purchase this and download it instantly. And let's see, and Della Flores, you want to know, or Judy Warren, she loves it. That's awesome. Della Delia Flores, you want to know, does it read designs in other software? Absolutely. Any designs that you have purchased, as long as it's an embroidery design or an SVG file, it will read it and give you that image. So it's not proprietary to only Dime embroidery files. It's everybody. Do the designs have to be unzipped first? Yes, they do have to be unzipped first. And yeah, Kristen Swanson, it is so important to be able to see your designs. You'll never go back. It's awesome. And it just sits in the program, on your computer. Do you need to have a previous software like PEP or My Lace Maker? No. It will work if you have another software program, because remember, it's not truly working with an embroidery software program. It's working with Windows Explorer or the directories on a Mac. So it doesn't really have anything to do with the software that you're using. And in fact, what you just saw on my hard drive, I wasn't in any software. I was just in the hard drive of my computer in a folder looking for specific embroidery designs. So it really doesn't matter what kind of software you have. But I don't know why you wouldn't use ours, because it's the easiest to use. Shh, did I say that out loud? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. But I'm supposed to, because I love it. Okay. So shall we move over to talk about binding? Is it time to talk about binding? Just want to make sure. Does it work on a Mac without an emulator? Yes, it works on, well, it works. I don't know what an emulator is, but it does work on a Mac, and we have a Mac key that you install onto your Mac in order to use any of our software. And so you would need that for Perfect Stitch Viewer. It is free and easy to install. So yeah, let's see. Can you put it on more than one computer? Yeah, maybe somebody in my team would verify that. I believe you can put it on two. I believe you can put it on two computers, but look in here in the comments. Somebody of authority will get me straight, because goodness knows, you never know what I'm coming out with. All right, let's see. Let's move over to binding. So lots of, steps in making binding, right? You got to cut the fabric, you have to press it, you have to attach it, and then press it again, pin it, and then finally stitch in the ditch. So, okay, let's see. Okay, is the key like a dongle? The key is not like a dongle. The key is only for Mac, and that's so our software can be read on Mac. So it is not a dongle. It is, you just install it along with the software, and then your software works seamlessly all the time. You never have to worry about you not being able to use it. Okay, and so we do have an official word. Yes, you can install Perfect Stitch Viewer on two computers. That is your limit. So isn't that awesome? Okay, oh, Sue Brown, binding is your nemesis. I understand, but you know what? I've gotten better at it. I have gotten better at it. I used to kind of curse it. And gee, I remember touring the country with my sister Marie and showing beautiful quilts that had no binding. Literally, I know, you just can't get to it all, right? But I'm better at it now. And frankly, I enjoy it because I've gotten over the hassle part and I know how to do it right now. So let's take a look. All right. First thing you're going to do is you're going to measure your quilt, right? So length plus width times 2 will tell you the perimeter of your quilt. And then I add a lot more fabric, literally like 20 inches, maybe 24. I always cut my fabric, my binding strips crosswise, selvage to selvage, 2.5 inches in height, selvage to selvage, and then I piece that together. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And then, have extra. And then I save all those extra scraps and I use them for scrappy binding, pieced binding on a quilt that is a scrappy quilt. So it's super easy to do that. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. We're going to talk through these, and then I'm going to show you in the overhead cam and then actually go to the machine. So I've cut my fabric here 2.5 inches wide times the length that I need, which could be, 96, 102, 120, something, whatever it is. And then I cut the one end at an angle like this and fold over about 1/4 inch. Clearly, I didn't cut that very well, so you're never going to see it. And then I take a 1/4 inch strip of fusible web and fuse that right along that crease on the inside. And then remove the protective paper and fold over that raw edge and press it in place. Okay, somebody's going to, Misha is asking me, is self-binding harder than piece binding? I have never done self-binding. I think I did it once and hated the process, so I always do piece binding. So I'm not your go-to person for that. Okay, let's see. So then, now I have pressed that long strip in half. So now it measures in height 1 1/4 inches tall by, that 120. And then, it's all nice and tidy. And then we'll go over to the overhead cam so you can take a look. So here is how I'm, that's if it's one long piece. But, we have to piece it together, right? You're not going to sew these lengths of fabric like this. You want to sew it, place them perpendicular to each other. And if you're new to it, I just use this as kind of a cheating tool. So I fold back my one strip and I press that down. I even press it with an iron. And then when I open that back up, I know what direction to sew on because I want to sew this seam right here, right this way. And then when I open it up, I have, my long strip and I don't have any bulk in just one area. If I had, joined it in one continuous, if I had joined it like that, then I would just have a whole lot of bulk when it comes to adding it to the quilt. Okay, so now I showed you that cheater's end, right? How I, let's go ahead and do that right now. So I would cut this at an angle and fold that back. You don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, 1/4 inch, the whole way. This is very forgiving. And then I'm going to just take a little bit of fusible web, just a tiny little strip, and fold that over. And then remove that, peel that away, and fuse it down. Now that raw edge is permanently secured. I'm going to trim off this dog ear because I won't need that. And then I'll actually take another piece of fusible web and I place that here. So now remember, the first piece that I used fused these two layers together. Now this piece is going to help me secure the tail as I attach all the way around. And I actually just kind of leave that in place, leave the paper on, because now I will go through the process of pressing this in half, meeting the raw edges, and pressing the whole length of this binding strip. And once that's complete, now I'm ready to apply that to my quilt. So let's go over to the machine and do that. Now you'll see the Weightless Quilter is surrounding my quilt. And right now I only have 2 poles attached. And I have a short one in the back. And I have one of the taller ones also in the back, but further away from the machine. And the reason why I do that is because when I want to be able to get I'm going to be sewing quite a distance. So I want that Weightless Quilter to wiggle and really give me movement and freedom as I am stitching this. Now, another thing to, I know if this is an award, if I'm going into a competition, I would attack my binding in a very different way by strict measurements, making sure that this pieced binding hits, you know, the quilt sections exactly where I want it. But right now, all I'm concerned about is I don't want this seam to hit the corner. So that's really all I'm worried about. I want to be able to navigate around that corner and bind that corner without that seam getting in harm's way. So that's the measurement I do. Yeah. Clearly, I'm not a competition quilter, but that's okay. I love to quilt and I have a lot of fun doing it. And that's what's important to me. So now I have my binding in place, and I am going to sew with just the bottom layer for just a little bit. So let me get this situated under here. And I am starting to sew right along that point because I want that point to be captured to the quilt itself. And I'll lower the presser foot and I'll just start sewing. And I'm using that dual feed foot, which is beautiful. Of course, you don't have to use that. You could use a regular 1/4 inch foot. So I'm going to sew about 5 inches, maybe 6 inches. And then I'll tie it off. And then I'm going to fold that over and start sewing all the layers together. So what that does is that leaves a nice gap for me to lay in the other end of the binding. You could pin it, but I really don't do that. I just let it, you know, I just apply it just like I'm doing. I kind of hold on to the quilt and just 1/4 inch foot, and I kind of let the fabric just run right along the edge of that fabric guide that's on the 1/4 inch foot, and I just let it run. And I'm going to go all the way to the corner, and I'm going to stop a 1/4 inch from the corner. Now, I will tell you that I did baste the edge of my quilt so that all 3 layers of my quilt are a nice flat, you know, quilt so that I don't have pieces flopping around. Now, I want to make sure that I stop a 1/4 inch from the corner, and I'm going to lift that presser foot and rotate my quilt so that I'm at a 45-degree angle and just stitch right off the edge. And then, I'll get this so you can see this fairly well. So then I take that binding and I want to fold it up like so, and I'm pulling it back at a 45-degree angle. And that's what those couple of stitches do for you. They just dictate that angle, which is awesome. And then I'll take, you know, just a flat object like a skewer, and I use that to make sure that that crease is nice and even with the edge of the quilt. And then I just clip that in place. I want to clip this part, the other, all those layers. I want everything to be captured in that clip. And, you know, I'm going to have to move it as soon as I get it under the needle, but it works out okay. You just need it to be held in place while we manipulate the quilt. Now you can see that the Weightless Quilter is holding that quilt for me. And after I stitch a little bit, I'm going to get up and rotate the quilt on the poles. So I will have to get up 4 times when I'm doing a binding on the Weightless Quilter. But wow, you know what? It's worth it to me. Absolutely worth it to me. So then I'll just pull this off and rotate in this fashion. So right now there's nothing holding the quilt in that back corner because, you know, there's nothing there. And I mean, the quilt's not out there yet. So I do have another little pole. No, maybe I don't. Okay, so if I had my other pole, I would put it right there, possibly on a big quilt to hold this part of the quilt. But right now I'm going across the width of the quilt, which is skinnier than the length. But you can see how it's just holding that quilt for me. I'm not fighting it. I mean, it's awesome. It's just awesome. So I have a smaller quilt here that I thought I would use to show you how to connect the binding. So let's just pause that for a moment, and I'm going to go back and see if you have questions before I move on to the smaller one. Let's see. Let's see. Retha Ranky, you always do self-binding. You're bold. You are bold. Good for you. Joanne Banco, she says, you can use the laser, which is built onto your machine. Absolutely. You most certainly can use the lasers that are built onto that machine. I didn't think that my camera work here would be, strong enough so that you could see it. Where do you start after you turn the quarter? I start right at the edge of the fabric. So I'll give you a look under the tight cam for that. But I right at the edge of the quilt, I just start sewing right on down. Let's see, connecting the binding is, yeah, it is fun watching the quilt flex, and the Weightless Quilter is still on sale today. It goes off sale tomorrow. So, okay, let's go over so you can take a look at where I start. And I'm just going to move this out of the way and switch over to a small, kind of placemat so you can see more of it. Just pardon my back. Ugh. Okay. So, let's see. Maybe I'll take this over to the overhead cam so you can get a better look. So when I start stitching, I stitch right at the edge of the fold, right at the fold. Look, I'm in about 1 stitch in from that fold, and that's how I do each of those corners. I'm like one stitch in, and that's probably because I'm older and I can't see that well. But anyway, okay, here we go. So now I've already done, I have my 3 corners. I thought I would do 1 more corner for you and then show you how I finish so you can get a good look at that. And we'll just zoom along here at our 1/4 inch foot. Love those 1/4 inch foot feet. I like the feet that have the fabric guide right on the bottom, that little guide. Oh boy, that's heaven. That's just heaven. Okay, I probably went too far on that one. And then we'll just flip that back again, right? So I hope you can see this, but I have pull that binding back so that it is even with this edge of the quilt. And that tells me that I have a 45-degree angle. And then I hold the binding in place and pull the rest of it down. And you can also check on this area in here. So let me clip this and show you what I mean. You want these layers of the binding right here to be laid on top of each other. We don't want it to look like that. That would not give us a good mitered corner. We need it to be just right on top of each other. And then we know when we go to turn, it's going to be just perfect. So now I just carefully I'm holding on to all those layers with my left hand. And then I just remove that clip and then start to stitch. Okay, so now you can see I have a lot of excess. And this is where I started sewing. All of this is sewn down to the placemat, and then this is the beginning of the 2 layers of the binding. So I'm going to go ahead and cut away some of this. And I'm sure I selected the dullest scissors in the house. I did. And then we're going to just put that inside. I'm going to snug that up. And I do like to pull on that fairly taut. And I get all those layers together, and then I'm just going to sew right down, capturing all the layers. Now, depending on the foot that you're using, you may have to be a little careful that you don't catch that edge of the binding on the foot. But that's about the only thing you have to worry about. Okay, so there we have it. Now, I'm going to cut that. And now we'll go back over. We have a lot of work to do with preparing the turning. So I always press all the layers just like that. And you take the time to, do it right. And then remember, I had another piece of fusible web underneath of here. So I'm going to press that nice and flat. And then when we turn it, I'll press from the other side. And I like to take my iron and press all the way out. And I'm sure some of you are really experienced, expert quilters, and you might have other methods of doing this that are maybe easier, maybe more precise, but this is how I've been doing it. I actually learned all these techniques from my good friend Nancy Zeman, and they work for me, for sure. They work for me. And it makes the end of that big job of making a quilt, piecing the quilt, quilting the quilt, and then binding it. It makes it easy work. Now you can use clips, you can use pins. Now what I'm doing is I'm pulling on that, oh, you don't see that. I'm pulling on that corner and holding it down on the back and then doing the same on the other edge of the placemat. And then it is wise to go ahead and press that really well. And you can clip. Now, I'll show you another trick that I learned from my friend Joni Zaire-Poole, who is an award-winning quilter. And what she does is after she presses all of this open, so we press it open, and then we flip our work so that we're working from the back. And she runs a bead of Elmer's glue right along that edge, right? Just a really light bead. See how fast I'm moving the bottle? Because if I stay there, it will puddle. And then you pull that binding over and that glues it down. And you can press it, heat set it. Beautiful. It works really well. See how that stays in place? Of course, you would do the same on, all the edges. And you can sew right through this. It dries really quickly. You don't have to worry about it harming your machine or gumming up your needle. It's very user-friendly. And I don't know if Joni does it. I'll tell you, she is a fantastic quilter, and she was actually very instrumental in helping me get the Weightless Quilter to market, because originally the Weightless Quilter I invented it for free motion quilting, and then realized, oh my goodness, this is awesome for an embroidery machine. So I use it for that. And actually, this little placemat is all free motion quilting that I had, played with, learning how to do free motion, I've been doing that for years, but, just kind of practicing, getting better at it. And but when I realized that the Weightless Quilter worked so good with the embroidery machine, I sold my sit-down mid-arm and just went back to embroidering, quilting with an embroidery machine, because super easy and fast. Right? Like this little placemat. Oh, you embroiderers, you will appreciate this. This little placemat. To do free motion quilting, it's really busy print fabric, so you can't see it, but it literally took like an hour and a half, to quilt this little block. And if this was done on my beautiful Solaris there, that would have been probably 8 minutes. So see how easy it is when you use the glue? See what a better grip you get? Because these, still need more pins and clips and so forth. So now let's head over to the machine, and we will stitch in the ditch. I just want to make sure there's no more questions. Let's see. Yep, the glue is really, really going to help. It is Sue Brown. Lisa Schwartz, why do I use glue? It just holds better. It's a tighter grip and less pins. That's all. It's just less pins. And hi, Cindy Graff. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, Lisa, you never used glue before. It's super easy to use. Okay, so let's go over and stitch in the ditch. And you know, you have so many choices of decorative stitches, but I am just going to stay with the straight stitch and truly stitch in the ditch. But on my dual feed foot, I'm going to use, I think this is actually an edge binding foot. And look at the underside. It has this little blade. It's not really a blade, it's a fabric guide. And on, if I'm not using that fancy foot, then I use, I think this is the blind hemming foot. It's R for in baby lock, it's the R foot. And that also has a guide here. And it has, you know, a guide there that has a little notch out for the needle. But what it lets me do is, and here I'll switch this so that I can put that on. I use that guide and place it right in the seam line. So let's see. So I put that blade right there in the seam line, and then I just start stitching. And this is set up so that my needle is just buried in that seam, truly stitching in the ditch. I love it. It's awesome. You could also do a decorative stitch. This would help center the decorative stitch on the, you know, the binding. And, you know, there's lots of beautiful stitches, you know, that maybe you don't want to hide, right? You really want to showcase the binding. Okay, so I'm going to, you don't need to watch me sew that whole thing, but I'll just let you see how nice and smooth. We'll go over to that other camera. It's probably a better look. How nice and tight that is. So you can't even see where the stitching is on this part. And then this is also where the glue side was. So see what a nice, strong finish you're getting, in the sense that you're capturing that whole binding. Now, I know some of you, this does not meet your expectations. You probably want to do it by hand. Well, hand in my world is a 3-letter word. And if I had to do everything by hand, absolutely nothing would be done. So yeah, I don't do that hand stuff for sure. Well, let's see. When you free motion quilt, you start at the top left corner. You can do that on the Weightless Quilter, because the Weightless Quilter is, you have to baste your quilt. So that tells you you can start anywhere you want when you are free motion quilting. Now, you probably will not, you know, when you free motion quilt, you often sometimes toss the quilt, right? You rotate it at will. So you won't do that with the Weightless Quilter. I mean, you can somewhat, but remember, it's like having someone stand there and hold it for you. So they're holding the ends of the quilt. So you're not going to be able to like flip the whole quilt. You can to a certain degree, but anyway, I love it. It's worth it. But you know, when you free motion quilt, you don't have to stitch in one direction. You can stitch in any direction, right? Just because it's a straight line doesn't mean it has to go forward and back. You can move the quilt in any fashion that you'd like. Yeah, yes. Let's see. You have a Viking Diamond. Which foot would be good to try this with binding? I think you have a stitch in the ditch. Viking has beautiful feet. Just look for a edge joining foot or a stitch in the ditch foot. Yes. The Weightless Quilter works for sewing, binding, free motion, and quilting, and of course embroidery. Yeah, I love mine too. I love it. I use it more than I thought I ever would, and it makes me want to quilt more often because it's so easy. It takes all the hassle out of it. It makes it so much fun. Absolutely. So that's still on sale today for $299, and it's so worth its weight. I'm going to show you the box. Many people say, how do you store it? Well, in my studio at home, I have a basket that is kind of a tall cylinder. You know, it's about 24 inches tall, and its diameter is probably about 12 inches. It's kind of wide open, and this just sits in it. And actually, I put my pool noodles in that same basket, and I put my poles inside the noodles, because you know the noodles are hollow, right? So I just store my poles in there, and then that way it keeps everything nice and straight and rigid, and I don't have to worry about it all flopping all over the place. So that's really handy. Lisa Schwartz, you're welcome. This is so fun. I mean, I love doing this. You know, my stitching sister, Marie Zeno, and I spent 6 years traveling the country teaching all over America. And it was probably the most pleasant 6 years of my career. And I miss it. I miss meeting people and sharing this passion of embroidery. So this is a great way to do it. It's really fun. Let's see. And how does this technique differ from using a binding foot? Well, binding feet are excellent feet. If you know how to operate a binding foot, then use it for sure. But this is technique I've been doing for almost, 15, 20 years, and it's what I'm comfortable with. I have found many binding feet don't open up wide enough for me, that the opening, and I spend more time kind of shoving my quilt sandwich through that opening than I'd like to. So, and maybe that's because, user error, but if you love your binding foot, absolutely, just go ahead and use that. Yeah. Oh, Dory, thank you. Yep. I know Dory came on a cruise with us, and Dory's from South Florida down there on the west side. And we've had a lot of fun together, an awful lot of laughs. I have photos of my stitching sister and I leaving the cruise, holding onto the railing like we don't want to leave. It was so fun. But anyway, someday we'll all get back to those things, right? We'll get on the road again, get into dealer stores and connect and meet with one another. And maybe we'll even get to a cruise. Who knows, right? Okay, well, let's see. What do we have next week? We are going to, oh boy, what are we doing next? Oh, next week we have an exciting new collection from our friend Angela Wolf, our brother ambassador. So we're going to be teaching all about that, how to do continuous lace, and that'll be super fun. You'll see some pretty images and inspiration on how to decorate ready wear, or if you are creating from scratch. So that's going to be super fun. I can't wait for that. Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining me today. I hope you take advantage of those 2 specials. Remember, Weightless Quilter goes off sale today, so you only get that special sale today. And Perfect Stitch Viewer, you're the first to see that at $79.99, and that will be on sale all week. So thank you so much for joining me. Take care, stay healthy, and we'll see you here next week at 1 o'clock.